Before I start, I would like to emphasize, more than a guide, this is based on my multiple experiences meeting women, getting into relationships, and yes, traveling around the world. So although I don't believe that a step-by-step guide can exist, since context and nuance are very important, at a minimum I can tell you that my knowledge comes from interacting with women from multiple countries and backgrounds. Hence I believe that I have recollected enough evidence so what I am about to tell you holds a fair amount of truth. First and foremost, and if you are a young man, you need to understand that getting a young woman's number is nothing but a formality. You aren't there for collecting phone numbers after all, you are there for meeting the girl. So this is the first piece of nuance that I think is very important. The number is only needed once a date or at least the idea of a date with you has been established. I know, some of you have the idea that first, you should get the number, and then ask for a date. To be honest, I really hate that. Perhaps I'm too old school, but for me, there is nothing farther from coming across as confident than asking for a date behind the protection of a text message. During my journey trying to meet women, doing such a thing did nothing but give me lots of unnecessary anxiety waiting for a reply, and it rarely changed the outcome. Furthermore, I would only do such a thing during my first attempts, and because honestly, I was too scared for risking asking the girl for a date and getting rejected right there and then. I vividly remember the first time I got a girl's number. Although I had already overcome most of my fear of rejection, I was so clueless back then, that I was completely incapable of allowing my romantic intentions to be known. And when I finally got the courage of asking the girl for her number, she was so confused that she even asked me what I wanted her number for. To which I just replied that I wanted to talk to her. I will admit, I was so excited at the time. In my mind, the scenario of both of us going out on a date was very real. So what happened? Well, as you can imagine, it was very difficult to escalate from an awkward conversation in person, to something let's say more romantic by texting her. Of course, it didn't help that at the time my texting game was non-existent. Most of the time it will be a one-way dialogue, with her occasionally acknowledging whatever I was texting her about. I couldn't just keep doing that. So one good day I decided to send her a text asking her out on a date. The anxiety was real. And lo and behold, there was no answer from her. I then took another decision, a better one, of course. I decided to call her instead. Now she did answer the phone, but when I was trying to ask her out on a date she suddenly cut me off and told me she was busy. Of course, being the genius I was, I couldn't leave things like that. So I proceed to ask her what she was busy with. Maybe I will manage to create some conversation. Very bluntly she told me that she was out with her boyfriend and that she couldn't talk to me right now. Not gonna lie, I was shattered, not to mention heartbroken. But looking back, that was entirely my fault. I shouldn't have created expectations of that kind out of a simple conversation. In any case, that experience was so traumatic for me at the time, that I actively decided to never again use texting for asking a girl out on a date. The nervousness and sheer anxiety of waiting for a reply weren't worth it. If the girl didn't have any real romantic interest in me, and I was going to be rejected anyway, it was going to be right there and then. From that point forward I would be very honest and direct when talking to a girl. Not only that would save me a lot of anxiety in the future, but surprisingly, and although I couldn't avoid getting rejected from time to time, my success rate would increase dramatically. And how about my texting game? Ah well, you can't win them all. For some good amount of time, I would still struggle with knowing what to text to a girl to keep the conversation going. I remember this one time when I was living in Berlin. I happened to meet this girl at a house party. Now the advantage of meeting people from different countries is that it gives you a lot to talk about. So after chatting with her for most of the party, I decided to just ask her out on a date. And of course, after my previous experiences, I took her phone number afterward, just to agree when exactly we would meet. She was a very pretty blonde girl, and well, taller than me, which honestly wasn't difficult to run into, since I'm not really tall myself. That aside, she seemed to like me as much as I liked her. I could tell because of her overall reaction when I asked her out and took her number. The next day though, I thought that I didn't want to come across as needy or desperate. So I decided that I needed to wait before texting her to check when we could go out. Now, tossing aside my own common sense, this waiting game was bad advice that I took from a dating forum regarding how you should deal with very attractive women. I then wait, and wait, and wait, perhaps, way too much. Looking back, it was something very dumb of me. I waited 3 days before I finally text her. But according to a lot of dating advice out there, very attractive women have so many guys lined up that you should stand out somehow by not texting her right away. Yes, of course, they all do. Anyway, did she reply? Ah, yes. Not only that, she called me back. That should have been a good sign, right? And what did she call me for, you may wonder? Well, among other things, she told me that I could forget about it. That she didn't know who I think I was for making her wait for so long. Of course, I would spend the rest of my day kicking myself in the head. But hey, not everything was bad news. At least she liked me enough to care about me not calling her back. Ah well, live and learn. So with that out of the way, how would you ask for her number? Well, you don't. You don't actually request her number with a closed-ended question. From my experience, if you ever need to resort to something like, "Can I get your number?" you are probably doing something wrong. Specifically, you probably are not feeling that she is very interested in getting to know you. Every time that I managed to get a woman's number and went out on a date with her, I would say things such as, "Give me your number so I can text you during the weekend. Add your number, if I need to text you, I can text you, and you can let me know," etc. Now context is very important. I would get her number in such a way because I had already established that I wanted to go out on a date with her. And as I said, the number was just a formality so we could agree on the exact day, hour, and place to meet. Or as in any business appointment, just to confirm that she will be able to make it. During my learning years, I even experimented by not asking the girl for her phone number. Instead, I would set up a date and agree to meet with her at a specific place. How did that work out? Well, not terribly, but eventually she will insist that we should have each other's number just in case. Bottom line, you don't really ask for the number, and never ever with a closed-ended question. This is especially true with young women since overall anxiety and nervousness can simply make her say no. Also, another thing I learned is that women will like you better when you have the confidence to ask them out in person. And well, some women will frown upon you if you only express interest in them by sending texts. What about the text game, you may ask? Well, that may be a topic for another video. But from my experience, texting should only be an extension of the interaction you had while dating. Remember, you request the number from her for both of you to stay in touch, because you are supposed to already want to do that. You should never text her to express something that you wouldn't say to her in person. Now I know how this may sound to some of you, but I was also impressed by the power of just casually telling a woman to give me her number, instead of asking for it. Establish the fact that you want to go out with her, get the number, and get to know each other. And well, if she doesn't seem very enthusiastic about the idea of going out with you in the first place, just move on. The world is wide and full of opportunities.